My name is Adam Whitaker. I'm 38, an architect based in Seattle, and until a few months ago, I genuinely believed I had the kind of marriage people envy. My wife, Claire, is 36, a pediatric nurse with the kind of calming presence that makes strangers trust her within minutes. We met 12 years ago at a mutual friend's engagement party. She spilled wine on my shirt, apologized 100 times, and insisted on paying for dry cleaning. I ended up asking her out instead. We got married 2 years later, surrounded by friends, family, and that naive, comforting belief that love could weather anything. And for a long time, it did. We built a life, bought a modest but beautiful house on Mercer Island, no kids, by mutual agreement. Just our dog Milo and a shared love for hiking, cooking on Sundays, and binge-watching true crime documentaries. On the surface, we were solid, the kind of couple who finishes each other's sentences and argues only over where to eat. My best friend since college, Jake, was practically family. He was my best man, Claire's go-to for tech problems, and one of the few people I trusted implicitly. He'd recently started consulting for Claire's hospital's administration office, a fact I initially thought was a lucky coincidence. In hindsight, I realize how trust is often the perfect camouflage. It started small, so small I almost feel foolish for noticing. Claire had always been a little private with her phone, but it wasn't suspicious. She was a nurse. Patient confidentiality, late-night calls, emergency messages, it all made sense. But then she changed her phone's passcode. When I asked, she laughed it off. "New hospital policy," she said. I'd said we should update our passwords regularly. Logical, sensible. I let it go. But the next week, she started working late more often. Sometimes twice, 3 times a week. Always a last-minute shift, always exhausted when she got home. I'd greet her at the door with dinner, and she'd offer a half smile, a tired kiss, and head straight to the shower. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Nursing is demanding. People burn out. Still, the unease grew. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find her not in bed. I padded out into the hallway, the faint blue glow from the living room lighting my path. Claire sat on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, whispering. When I stepped into the doorway, she jumped and quickly ended the call. "Everything okay?" I asked. She turned, startled. "Yeah, just a patient's parent. One of those long cases. They're panicking again." Even as she spoke, she tucked the phone into the cushions, out of sight. My gut twisted. I talked to Jake about it over beers one weekend. He shrugged, took a long drink, and said, "You sure you're not just overthinking, man? Claire's solid. She loves you. You've got one of the good ones." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the next day, something happened I couldn't ignore. Claire left her Apple Watch charging on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But I walked past it, and a message popped up. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it." No name, just a heart emoji at the end. I froze. My mouth went dry, and my pulse thundered in my ears. I stared at the message, half hoping I'd misread it, that it was a joke or a friend being dumb. But Claire didn't have friends who texted like that. And it definitely wasn't for me. When I confronted her that night, I tried to stay calm. "I saw a message on your watch," I said, "from someone saying last night was incredible." Her face went white, a flicker of panic, gone in a second. "Oh, that? That was Emily from work. She and I went out for drinks, and she was flirting with the bartender like crazy. I told her she should go for it. She must have been talking about that." A lie, clean, quick, and rehearsed. I nodded, pretended to believe it. But inside, something cracked. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. I started watching her, quietly, discreetly, looking for more. She stopped inviting me to hospital functions, stopped letting me pick her up, started locking her laptop when she left the room. I confided in my younger sister Megan, sharp, protective, and no fan of Claire's since day one. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Adam, this doesn't sound like nothing." But others, they dismissed it. "Come on, man," Jake said again, with a weird edge to his voice. "Don't sabotage your own marriage over a damn emoji." Strange, how quick he was to defend her. Looking back, that moment feels like foreshadowing, like life gave me a hint and I ignored it. The real blow, the one that ripped everything apart, came a few weeks later. Claire told me she had a weekend work retreat, some kind of leadership seminar 2 hours away. Nurses, administrators, hospital staff. She packed in a rush and barely kissed me goodbye. But something felt off. That night, while drinking whiskey alone in our living room, Milo curled at my feet. I opened my laptop and checked our shared Amazon account. Claire had ordered lingerie. Expensive, lacy, 2-day shipping. Not something she'd worn around me in over a year. And then I saw it. The shipping address. Not the hospital. Not the hotel where the retreat was. But a lake cabin we'd rented years ago for our anniversary. A private place no one else knew about. Except Jake. My hands were shaking. I stared at the shipping confirmation like it might rearrange itself into something innocent. Something that made sense. But there it was. Our old anniversary cabin address, nestled by Lake Wenatchee. A 2-bedroom rental tucked in the woods, far from any hospital, retreat, or leadership seminar. It was already late Friday night. Claire had been at the retreat for hours. I sat there, numb, trying to convince myself not to go. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe Jake had rented the cabin for something unrelated. Maybe Claire wasn't even there, but the rationalizations felt hollow. Around midnight, I packed a small bag, grabbed Milo's leash, and drove. The lake was a 2-hour drive, winding through quiet roads and fog-soaked forest. Milo sensed the tension, restless in the passenger seat, eyes alert. I think he knew something was wrong before I admitted it to myself. I parked a short distance away from the cabin, hidden by trees. The lights were on inside, 2 sets of shoes by the door. And then I heard laughter. Not just any laugh, Jake's. I froze. Everything in me wanted to kick down the door, to storm inside and confront them both. But something deeper, colder, held me back. I didn't want a confrontation, not yet. I wanted the truth, every filthy, cowardly detail. So I did what I thought I'd never do. I opened the voice memo app on my phone, turned the volume to max, and quietly stepped onto the porch. The cabin structure was old, wooden, with thin walls. I didn't need to press my ear against the siding to hear them. Claire's voice, soft, playful. "You think he suspects anything?" Jake, "Nah, he's too loyal for his own good. He'd believe anything you tell him." Claire laughs. "I know, it's almost sad." Jake, "You're sure about this? About leaving him?" Claire, "I just need a few more months. Once the equity vests, I'll push for the divorce. I'll get half, maybe more." Jake, "And the house?" Claire, "I'm working on that. You'll have to lay low for a while after, but once things cool off, it'll be ours." Ours. They weren't just sleeping together. They were plotting to take my life apart. Everything tightened in my chest. I felt nauseous. My whole body went cold. The betrayal was one thing. But this was a setup. Calculated, cruel. I backed away slowly, Milo by my side, too stunned to bark. We got in the car, and I drove home in silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I started gathering everything, bank statements, emails, documents. I didn't confront her when she came back Sunday night, smiling like she hadn't spent the weekend betraying me. I pretended to believe every word, but I recorded our conversations, every excuse, every lie. I copied files from her laptop while she slept, backed up the iCloud, scanned credit card receipts, photos, even GPS history. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. She and Jake had been meeting for over a year, sometimes during double shifts, sometimes during work trips she never actually went to. There were even receipts for a hotel downtown, the same one she and I had gone to on our anniversary 3 years ago. I felt like I was living in a stranger's house, sharing a bed with someone who had become a character in a horror film. I needed help, not a friend, not family, a lawyer. I didn't want a scorched earth divorce, not at first. Even after everything, Claire's betrayal, the manipulation, the plans to take everything, I still wanted to believe there was some small ember of the woman I'd married, the one who used to leave notes in my lunchbox, who cried when we lost our first dog, who once said I was her safe place. But that woman was gone. In her place was someone who had not only deceived me, but weaponized my trust. I contacted a high-profile divorce attorney named Lena Drayton, sharp, ruthless, and known for dismantling spouses who tried to play dirty. She was highly recommended by a former client, a software executive who'd survived a similar marriage heist, as he called it. During our first meeting, Lena listened silently as I laid it all out. What I knew, what I'd recorded, the emails I'd printed and stored in a locked safe under my office floor. She leaned back, hands steepled, and asked calmly, "Do you want revenge or results?" "Both," I said without hesitation. She smiled. "Good answer." What followed was 3 weeks of meticulous preparation. Lena and her team subpoenaed financial records, secured metadata from Claire's devices, and consulted a digital forensics expert who verified that Claire had been sharing sensitive information about my business, plans, contacts, confidential architectural designs with Jake. I had no idea until then, but Jake had pitched a project eerily similar to mine to a rival firm 2 months earlier. This wasn't just infidelity. It was sabotage. We waited for the right moment. Claire was expecting a quiet dinner at home, a reset she'd called it, thinking she was still fooling me. She wore a soft pink sweater, the one I once told her brought out her eyes, and made her signature chicken piccata. She was playing her role to perfection. When we sat down, I reached under the table, pressed record on my phone, and said, "I know." She blinked. "Know what?" "That you've been sleeping with Jake, that you were at the lake cabin, that you're planning to divorce me and take half my business." Her face went blank. Then a flicker of something. Surprise, panic, maybe guilt. "You're being paranoid," she said softly. "That's not true." I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and opened a manila envelope. Inside, printed screenshots, transcripts, GPS logs, photos from the cabin, receipts, her browser history, her emails. I placed them in front of her like a dealer laying down the final hand. She didn't even try to read them. "I can explain," she whispered. "No, Claire, you can't, and you won't, because everything you say from this point forward goes straight to Lena." Her hands trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came out. I walked out of the room, leaving her there with the evidence, and called my lawyer. Within 48 hours, Claire was served. Jake, I later found out, had gone radio silent. Apparently, Lena's team had sent a pre-litigation warning to his employer, citing intellectual property theft. He was under investigation by his firm and had retained his own attorney. Snake that he was, he'd started distancing himself from Claire immediately. She had no allies, no leverage. She tried to contact me a dozen times. Emails, texts, even a handwritten letter slipped under the door. But Lena told me not to respond. And I didn't. Let her words rot unanswered. Let her feel the silence she gave me when I needed truth. We were heading for court, and she had no idea what was coming. The day of the hearing, Claire walked into the King County Superior Court looking like she'd just stepped out of a Pottery Barn catalog. Beige trench coat, low heels, soft makeup to paint herself as fragile, wronged, misunderstood. Jake wasn't with her. I arrived with Lena and her associate in tow. Black suits, no small talk. I wore the gray blazer Claire once said made me look like someone who'd never lose control. Fitting, because I hadn't. I'd stayed calm, meticulous, focused. Inside, the courtroom was quiet and sterile, but the tension was electric. Claire's lawyer, a man named Travis Sloan, looked slick and sure of himself. He smiled too easily, the kind of guy who thought charm could beat facts. He started off with the usual opening. Claire had dedicated her life to the marriage, supported me emotionally through the highs and lows of my business, and deserved equitable compensation for her contributions, both tangible and intangible. He even dared to say she had given up career growth opportunities for our relationship. That's when Lena stood up, cool and composed. "With the court's permission," she said, "we'd like to introduce documented evidence that directly contradicts opposing counsel's claim that the petitioner acted in good faith throughout the marriage." She handed over a thick tabbed binder. Inside, GPS tracking logs showing Claire's consistent presence at Jake's condo during work hours. Security cam footage from the lake cabin's neighborhood, provided by a neighbor. A forensic financial report showing Claire had been quietly moving money into a personal savings account. One I didn't know existed, the worst of it. Detailed emails and text messages discussing my business, including attachments of blueprints and client lists that were later used by a competitor Jake worked with. There was even a phone call, recorded legally, thanks to Washington being a one-party consent state, where Claire told Jake that once the divorce was final, they'd rebuild everything under his name using Adam's groundwork. Claire's face collapsed as Lena read it aloud in court. Her lawyer asked for a recess. Denied. Claire asked to speak. Also denied. The judge, a stern woman named McGrath, looked down over her glasses and said flatly, "I've seen some ugly divorces, but this is calculated fraud, potential corporate espionage, and emotional manipulation all rolled into one." Claire tried to interject. "It wasn't like that, Your Honor. Please." But McGrath raised a hand. "Mrs. Whitaker, I suggest you remain silent unless your counsel advises otherwise." I sat there, motionless, while everything Claire had built in her head came crashing down around her. Lena wasn't done. "We'd also like to enter Exhibit 43, she said, a signed prenuptial agreement with a fidelity clause, violation of which, as Your Honor can see, nullifies any claim to spousal support and subjects the offending party to asset forfeiture." Claire's mouth parted, stunned. She'd forgotten. Or thought I had. She'd signed it a decade ago, back when we were young and invincible, when she promised I'd never need it. That clause meant everything. By the time the day was over, the judge had ruled Claire was entitled to none of my business assets. Due to her breach of contract and attempts to compromise my firm, she would receive no spousal support. The house would remain in my name. Jake, facing potential legal consequences of his own, would be subject to a cease and desist for business theft, and banned from contacting either party during ongoing investigations. When we walked out of court, Claire tried to catch my eye. I didn't even look at her. She didn't deserve to see what it looked like when someone actually loved you once, and remembered how to protect themselves. After the ruling, everything moved fast. Lena's team filed to enforce the asset division immediately. Claire had 30 days to vacate the house, our house, but it didn't take that long. Within a week, she was gone. No goodbye, no drama, just an empty side of the closet, a faint scent of her lavender shampoo, and silence where there used to be sighs and laughter. I found out through mutual acquaintances that she moved into a sublet in Capitol Hill. Nothing fancy, just enough space for one. Jake wasn't with her. He'd been fired. The evidence Lena supplied to his employer made sure of that. Architectural firms don't take kindly to theft or ethics violations, especially when clients are involved. Last I heard, he was bartending part-time while dealing with a civil suit Lena filed on my behalf for corporate sabotage. He tried to negotiate a settlement. We declined. The lake cabin, gone. I called the owner and bought the lease out. Not to use it, just to make sure they never could again. I donated it to a veterans retreat program. I'll never forget how Claire tried to file a motion to revisit spousal support 6 weeks later. Claimed she was emotionally distressed, financially unprepared, and had misjudged the depth of her betrayal. Lena crushed it in minutes. We're happy to provide the full transcript of Mrs. Whitaker's recorded call with her co-conspirator, discussing how she intended to drain Mr. Whitaker's assets and start fresh. Motion, denied. The best part? We found another bank account, buried under her maiden name, linked to Jake's LLC. Nearly $47,000, money skimmed from our joint account over the course of a year. Claire tried to claim it was an emergency fund. The court saw it as fraud. I got it all back, plus damages. The furniture, mine. The dog, obviously mine. Milo never even looked at her after she left. Photos, sentimental items. I boxed them up and mailed them to her. No note. Her name was scrubbed from the mortgage, insurance, even the Wi-Fi. The life we built, now only mine. But here's what no one tells you. Victory is loud at first. Courtroom wins, friends cheering, people sending supportive messages. Then it gets quiet, and the silence is a strange kind of peace. I sat in the living room one night, surrounded by half-empty shelves and the ghost of what used to be us, and realized I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. Claire used to hum in the kitchen while cooking. She used to put her hand on my chest when she wanted to be held without asking. But now, even those memories felt scripted, performed, like a beautiful lie whispered just long enough to believe. I poured a glass of scotch, took Milo for a walk, and watched the city lights flicker across the water. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not just legally, not just financially, but spiritually. And I was just getting started. Somewhere between spring and early summer, life began to feel like mine again. I was rebuilding, not from scratch, but from a deeper kind of loss. Not just a broken marriage, a betrayal that tried to take my sanity, my work, and my trust. But in the wreckage, something unexpected bloomed: clarity. Friends who had once tiptoed around the subject of Claire started reaching out. Megan, my sister, called one evening while I was working on a design for a new public library downtown. She sounded smug. "I always knew she was off," she said. "But even I didn't see that coming. You good?" "Yeah," I told her. "Better than I thought I'd be." The truth, I was more than good. My business had surged. The media buzz around the court case, not the salacious gossip but the theft angle, actually brought in new clients. Some admired how I handled the divorce with restraint. Others just liked Lena's reputation and assumed if I worked with her, I was smart enough to trust. We never mentioned Claire's name again in those meetings. She was gone, irrelevant. A few months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I answered cautiously. Silence. Then, "Adam." Her voice, smaller than I remembered, shaky. "I know I shouldn't call," Claire said, "but I needed to hear your voice." I didn't respond. "I messed up," she whispered. "Worse than I even knew I could. Jake's gone. He turned on me the second things got hard. I lost my job after the hospital reviewed my communications. I can't even get a reference. I lost everything." A long pause. "I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know. I'm sorry. I really did love you. I lost myself somewhere." Her voice cracked. She started crying. I waited until she was done. Then I said, "I hope you figure out who you are, but don't ever call this number again." And I hung up. That was closure. Months passed, then a year. I started hiking again, Milo by my side. I took a trip to Iceland, something Claire had always said we'd do someday. I went alone, and I've never felt more connected to the world. Lena invited me to a firm party the following winter. I brought a friend. Her name was Elise. She wasn't flashy or dramatic, just kind, thoughtful, a librarian of all things. The type who paid attention when you spoke and didn't hide behind veiled motives or passive lies. We weren't serious, not yet, but there was potential. And more importantly, I was whole enough to recognize it. Sometimes I still get asked, "Would you ever forgive her?" And my answer is always the same. I did, but I'll never forget. Forgiveness wasn't for Claire, it was for me. The final piece of justice came unexpectedly, an email from one of Jake's former clients. He'd heard about what happened. He was looking for someone to design a new residential complex in Bainbridge Island. "Not sure what your rates are," he wrote, "but I'd rather pay double than deal with another backstabbing snake like him." I smiled, replied with a proposal, signed the contract 2 weeks later. My life, my way.